Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maiya Ahluwalia, and today I will be presenting about aging and nutrition, how to keep your gut healthy as we age. So, as we age, our digestive system undergoes a lot of different changes that can impact our overall health and well being. So, today we're going to dive deeper into exploring the critical conditions that can impact our gut health and chronic disease management, as well as nutrition as we age. And so today, by attending this session, you will gain insight about managing different chronic digestive issues, how to prevent nutrient deficiencies, as well as making dietary changes to support longevity. Specifically, when we talk about seniors, this is a very vulnerable population, and so we want to consider many different chronic disorders and how they can play a role in our digestive health. And by supporting nutrition, this can lead to long-term outcomes and higher quality of life. Just before we begin, a disclaimer. So this workshop is intended for educational purposes only. The content shared is not intended to substitute any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And you always want to seek professional support by your physician or qualified healthcare provider if you have any questions about your medical condition. I may provide different context in terms of my services that I offer, but participation in this workshop does not provide you with a relationship as a client of mine. So any decisions that you make, please ensure that you are consulting with your healthcare provider and taking sole responsibility for those changes as a result of attending this webinar. If you do require personalized care, you can reach out to a qualified healthcare provider like a registered dietitian for additional support. So let's dive into the content that we'll talk about today. So today we're going to be talking about how digestion changes as we age. We'll be talking about specific conditions that can impact digestion. We'll be talking about nutrition for digestive health, and then we'll also be touching upon non-diet considerations that can impact our age, nutrition and digestion as we age. A little bit about me. So as mentioned, I am a registered dietitian. I own a practice that is virtual in Ontario, Canada, called Nourishing Balance Integrative Health Team, and I focus on women's health, pre and postnatal nutrition, digestive health, family nutrition and meal planning, as well as pediatric and toddler nutrition. And I take an emphasis in considering cultural needs for my clients, specifically emphasizing working with the South Asian demographic as well. So digestion as we age. Let's dive into it. So when it comes to digestion as we age, there's a lot of different dietary considerations that we want to consider. First and foremost, we often know that as we age, we have decreased gastrointestinal motility. This means that food often is moving through our digestive system slower, specifically our colon. And so this can lead to reduced appetite, early satiety, so feeling full faster, as well as potentially constipation. And so we really want to consider these when we talk about nutrition implications, which we will. The second digestive change that can happen is a change in our stomach acid and digestive enzymes. So both of these things, digestive enzymes and stomach acid, can help break down food. And so when we have decreased secretion of stomach acid, specifically hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes, this can impact our body's ability to now digest certain things like dairy, for example. And so we may want to take additional consideration, or if we do start to develop potentially any intolerances or foods that we can't digest the same that we used to be able to. Another factor, just generally speaking, is an altered gut microbiota. So we know that as we age, we have less microbacterial and bio diversity in our gut. And so this can shift the amount of bacteria that we have and the types of bacteria that we have. And by altering our diet, this can also impact, again, those probiotics, the bacteria that lives in our gut, and therefore impact our ability to digest certain foods overall. Another consideration is that we may also have impaired nutrient absorption, meaning that our body may not be able to absorb the same amount of nutrients that it once did. So these could be things like malabsorption of fat-soluble vitamins such as vitamin A, D, E, and K, as well as other vitamins and minerals such as vitamin B12, folate. And so we'll talk about specific nutrient considerations and how to combat that later in this webinar. Another one to consider as well is changes in our oral and salivary production. So we know that as we age, we often have decreased saliva production. We also may have altered taste and smell. And so this can impact our choices that we are making as we age, as well as potentially oral decay and teeth loss as well. And so this could impact our ability to chew, swallow, or our pleasure around food as well. And so this may contribute to inadequate intake. And then the last one we want to consider is polypharmacy. So basically medication consumption. So we know that as we age, a lot of individuals are being prescribed different medications, such as antacids, diuretics, chronic disease medications, such as metformin, or cholesterol medications. And so this can impact our electrolyte imbalances, such as our sodium production and retention. It can deplete our B vitamins from our body, as well as cause different gut impairment or issues. So kind of tying into the impaired nutrient absorption that we highlighted just a couple minutes ago. So I just wanted to talk about the common digestive issues that exist. And it is important to note that actually 1/3 of seniors or 80 that are 80 years and older often have at least 4 chronic conditions, such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes. And so if you have any pre-existing considerations, this could potentially be impacting or making your condition either better or worse. And knowing that you had this chronic disease, meaning that it's been an ongoing process, this could be something that impact your digestive health for many years. So we're going to be focusing on the different digestive conditions, but if you have other chronic diseases that may also be playing a role in some of these other digestive conditions that are now just starting to brew or develop for you. So I just wanted to highlight some of the common conditions here. So we're going to talk about 8 different conditions. First being constipation. So constipation is defined as passing stool less than 3 times per week. And 25% of Canadians from the age of 65 to 95 are dealing with constipation compared to the 15% in the general population. So a 10% increase as we go from kind of that 65 plus age group. And this could be contributed to potentially moving less, again, our digestive motility slowing down that we talked about, and changes in our diet overall. Secondly is gastrointestinal reflux disease, or GERD, or for short form, just reflux. And so this is defined as a chronic heartburn, so burning that can happen in our digestive system. And we really want to focus on identifying trigger foods here because this could be triggered by a variety of different things for different people. Again, we know that even potentially the tightness of our clothes could play a role. And then we really want to focus on just identifying if there is certain things that are potentially impacting just the symptoms that come when they develop and if they are relieved at any point in time. So it's very individualized. The third one is dysphagia. So, dysphagia is defined as difficulty with swallowing, to potentially impair your oral, esophageal function and phases of swallowing. So, when it comes to dysphagia, this can alter again the choices that we're able to make, the consistency of the food that we're consuming, and therefore potentially the nutrients that we are also getting as a result. And then lastly for the slide, gas and bloating. So this is just generally kind of some of the symptoms where you feel full really fast. You could feel abdominal tightness, pain, could be defined as sharp pain, or as well gas that has bowel order throughout the day as well. And so this could be linked to other digestive conditions such as constipation, or, for example, other chronic digestive issues as well. These are just a couple more that I wanted to discuss. So, food intolerances. So, this is a gut mediated response where our bodies has the inability to digest certain foods. And we talked about how things like our stomach acids and digestive enzymes can be altered as we age. And so, we know that this could potentially impact our body's ability to be able to digest certain foods overall. So we really want to focus on identifying the triggers and trying to avoid or eliminate those from our diet potentially. The next two we're going to talk about is diverticulitis and diverticulosis. So these kind of go hand in hand. So when it comes to diverticulitis, this is a flare of a diverticulosis chronic condition. So when we have diverticulosis, essentially that's where there's small pockets or pouches in the lining of our digestive system, and they can basically collect certain food and cause us to have impaired digestion, or like quite painful episodes. So when these episodes start to happen, that is what we call diverticulitis. And so actually 65% of seniors often are non-symptomatic of diverticulosis, but we often will get that kind of flare, which can often cause episodes or trips to the hospital. And that flare is going to be considered diverticulitis. So we'll talk about some nutrition considerations that we want to consider when we are having that flare. And then lastly, dyspepsia. So dyspepsia is defined as an upper abdominal pain. Again, can kind of be similar to some of those symptoms that gas and bloating have. And so these can be caused by things such as diet changes, lifestyle changes, any inflammation happening, as well as potentially medication. So pharmacology, such as if you're taking chronic amounts of pain medication, such as ibuprofen or Advil, this can potentially contribute to some sort of abdominal pain or indigestion. And again, really, it's about understanding what is that trigger that's potentially contributing to causing you to have this abdominal pain. So let's dive into the nutrition for digestive health and how we can actually manage these conditions. So when it comes to our nutritional needs for digestion, we really want to focus on what you see here as Canada's Food Guide, where we're really focusing on having a balanced nutritional diet. So as you can see here, we really want to focus on the quality of what we're consuming versus quantity. We know that as we age, again, the quantity of how much we can consume can often be altered. And so we really want to focus on making sure that when we are eating, that we're focusing on quality. We want to aim to have adequate protein. So protein is essential for seniors because it can help maintain our muscle mass function and strength. And it can also prevent weight decline, which we know is very common for the aging population. Sources of protein or examples of protein, as you see here on the screen, could be both animal and plant-based proteins, such as things like beef, chicken, turkey, eggs, fish such as salmon, trout, or tuna, as well as plant options such as pulses, beans, tofu, nuts and seeds, and legumes. So all of these are great options in terms of trying to get your adequate protein needs in. And you can see here that we really want to focus on trying to have our plate be about 25% protein at each meal. The second category that we want to focus on is having a diet be half our plate of color, which would include things like fruits and vegetables. And so we really want to focus on fruits and vegetables because they're going to give us a source of fiber, which is very important for digestive health, as well as adequate amount of vitamins and minerals that are going to come from eating a variation of fruits and vegetables. So we really want to focus on variety, like I said. So things like dark leafy green vegetables, such as spinach and kale, having orange vegetables and fruits, such as oranges, carrots, squash, berries, apples, pears. These are all great. And if we struggle with digesting vegetables, trying to cook them more thoroughly can be a good way versus having raw salads or raw vegetables, which can be a little bit harder on our digestive tract. And as mentioned, you really want to focus on each meal being half the plate of color there, full of fruits and vegetables. And then the last category that we want to focus on is our whole grains. And so whole grains, we want that to be about 25% of our plate. And that's because, again, they are going to really have a great source of fiber. They are going to be rich in B vitamins. They are going to also help balance blood sugar. So if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, we really want to focus on making sure that when you are having carbohydrates, that they are high fiber to help stabilize that blood sugar. So some examples would be things like oats, quinoa, brown rice, sweet potato, squash, barley, buckwheat, just to kind of name a few. And then lastly, we really want to just focus on some general healthy eating habits, just limiting excess sodium consumption, especially if you do have high blood pressure. We really want to be mindful of different ways that sodium can be reduced in our diet. So, for example, if you are buying any canned, jarred, or packaged items, looking for low sodium or no added salt options. We want to avoid added sugar. So it's always better to eat the fruit versus drink the juice. And that's because the whole fruit, is going to still have that fiber content versus a juice that actually is going to have the fiber content removed from it. So we really want to focus on always eating the fruit versus the added sugar in added fruit juices, as well as if you are buying any packaged goods, there may be additional added sugar that's in there as well. And then we really want to focus on trying to flavor our food still so that it tastes palatable and delicious through adding things such as spices, herbs, garlic, lemon juice, healthy fats such as olive oil or avocado oil, versus trying to have a diet full of saturated fat intake. So trying to limit unhealthy oils such as vegetable oils can be a good option to really help balance out making sure that you're getting a healthy diet full of fats. I just wanted to emphasize the importance of fiber. So, fiber is something that as we age, we often lack in our diet. Most Canadians in general are not getting adequate amounts of fiber. So, you can see here that for a woman, that we want to be aiming to have about 21 grams of fiber per day. And for males, we want to be focusing on 30 grams of fiber per day if we are over the age of 50 years old. So fiber is going to come from some of the examples that you see here on the screen, such as fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains. So we talked about some different sources of that. And some examples of ways to incorporate some more fiber. If you're kind of a meat and potatoes type of person, try to incorporate 1 to 2 days per week where you do meatless days. So for example, you could do a meatless Monday, where you incorporate something like a lentil instead of something like a beef or chicken in your diet. You can also do half half. So, for example, if you're making a spaghetti bolognese, you could do half canned lentils, half ground beef. It's actually going to save you money, but also going to help increase the diversity of plant proteins in your diet. Other things that you can also do is add things like chickpeas to salads. You could incorporate hummus or black bean dips into your diet to have with different vegetables or have as a spread over toast or having that with crackers. So there's a lot of different ways that we can incorporate fiber in our diet. And again, trying to have a variety of plant foods per week is going to be a great way to do that.
So, I wanted to just highlight a little bit more about prebiotics versus probiotics. This is something I get a lot of questions about, and there's been a lot of questions just generally about probiotics for a lot of years, but I'm finding that prebiotics are becoming more popular and I'm getting more questions about those now. So, prebiotics are actually a type of non digestible fiber that feed the bacteria, probiotics, in our gut. Some examples of prebiotics include things like garlic, onions, leeks, asparagus, bananas, especially underripe bananas, chicory root, artichokes, and then a variety of different whole grains such as oats or barley as well. And so these prebiotics actually feed our probiotics. So probiotics are those live organisms that provide health benefits when consumed in adequate amounts. So we really want to focus on, again, a diet full of probiotics such as yogurt with live cultures, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh, and then of course there is probiotic supplements when needed. But making sure that we are focusing on not just the probiotics, but actually these prebiotics that feed those probiotics are also going to be very helpful so that those probiotics can live and thrive. Adequate amounts of these pre and probiotics can help support overall a healthy gut microbiome and support things like our immune system while reducing our risk for things like digestive disorders or intolerances as well. So, the more healthy bacteria that we have in the gut, the more that our body is going to thrive. I wanted to talk about hydration as well, as it plays a very important role in our digestion, specifically when we talk about different digestive disorders such as constipation or dysphagia. So we want to really make sure that we are having adequate hydration, which would include about 30 to 35 mils per kilogram of body weight of water. So we really want to focus on aiming to have about that much. And that could count as things like water consumption or juice or milk as well would count towards that. But we really want to try to sip on water throughout the day, because if we are having large gulps of water, this sometimes can contribute to indigestion or those GERD-like symptoms as well. If you struggle with having water, I'd recommend placing a water pitcher throughout your house or carrying a water bottle with you at all times, even when you're at home. And then you can also add things to your water to flavor it. So you could add things like fresh mint, cucumber slices, different fruits as well, just to kind of get some variety too. And then even just consuming foods that are high in water intake, especially in the summer months, can be great. So by having things like watermelons, strawberries, grapes, these all have a lot of hydration in them as well. So a great way to add some more hydration into your diet. And then lastly, you also want to consider your caffeine consumption, because caffeine will dehydrate us. So we want to make sure that we are compensating for drinking adequate amounts of water as well. Yes, you can count that our coffee and tea does have water, but you just want to be mindful of the fact that caffeine can dehydrate us. So we want to just make sure that we are balancing those two out. Some other nutrition considerations include consumption of ultra-processed foods. And that's because we know that ultra-processed foods are going to be low in fiber, but also high in things like preservatives, artificial sweeteners, and emulsifiers, which can disrupt our gut microbiota. And this can decrease the beneficial probiotics in our gut, such as lactobacillus or bifidobacteria. And so this can play a role in contributing to different digestive conditions. We also know that by consuming a diet full of ultra-processed food, it can displace certain other nutrients in our diet, such as getting a variety of fruits and vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, because we can only eat so much in the day. And so by consuming more of those ultra-processed foods, we're lacking other nutrients in our diet. And then they can also play a role in things like our blood sugar regulation, as well as if we are buying certain foods that have sugar alcohols or sweeteners, such as sucralose or aspartame. This can also cause digestive disruption and upset our stomachs as well too. So can impact our gut microbiome that way as well. The last thing I wanted to focus on when it comes to different foods is spicy and very acidic foods. So this pertains specifically for those that may have GERD, IBS, or IBD, and are potentially in a diverticulitis flare. So spicy foods such as like hot sauces, chilies, you can see here on the screen wings, for example, that have a lot of not only fat, but then also could be drenched in a spicy sauce. These can sometimes cause different disruptions to our symptoms. So just things to consider if it is something that does affect you. And then the other piece is acidic foods. So things like coffee, dark chocolate, tomatoes, lemons, limes, or anything carbonated as well can sometimes impact our digestive symptoms as well. So if that is, again, something that does affect you, you would just want to take extra consideration in terms of the amount of these items that you may be consuming, the frequency, and also if it is worth having in your diet. And then I lastly just wanted to talk about some key nutrients to consider. So when it does come to nutrient absorption, we know that with a variety of different conditions, that certain nutrients, specifically as mentioned here, fat-soluble vitamins, B vitamins such as B12 and folic acid, different minerals such as calcium, magnesium, and iron, and then lastly, protein being a macronutrient, can often be impaired in terms of absorption and adequate consumption if we do have different digestive conditions and just generally speaking as we age. When it does come to fat soluble vitamins, we know vitamin D, aka the kind of sunshine vitamin, is something that often seniors or elderly do not get enough of in their diet. That plus low sunlight exposure and reduced synthesis of vitamin D in our skin can cause a lot of nutrient deficiencies when it comes to vitamin D. So it's always good to have your vitamin D tested to see if that is something that you want to consider. And if we do need to focus on increasing vitamin D consumption in your diet, as well as considering supplementation when needed. Other nutrients to consider, as mentioned, is B12 and folic acid. So we know specifically if you are diabetic and taking diabetes medication such as metformin, this can significantly impact our absorption of vitamin B12. And so you may want to, again, have something like your vitamin B12 tested to see if you do have impaired absorption. And therefore, that's where kind of supplementation would potentially be needed if you are on these medications. If you have high blood pressure and you're taking a diuretic, you often could be peeing out or losing water-soluble vitamins, again, such as vitamin B, or or certain minerals as well. And so you may need to replace with things like electrolytes or supplementation where needed. And then we know that acid blocking drugs for things like GERD-like symptoms can decrease the absorption of certain nutrients, such as calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron, and even potentially protein. And so if you are struggling with things like iron deficiency, if you have any nerve dysfunction or muscle cramping or aching, this is where, just again, taking that consideration of any pharmacology that you're taking, talking to your healthcare provider or a pharmacist about this could be playing an important role in the nutrients that you're actually digesting and absorbing in your diet. And so therefore we want to just make sure that we are not lacking any of these key nutrients and dealing with extra symptoms that we don't want to necessarily be dealing with. I just wanted to talk about also some key nutrients, some condition-specific interventions as it relates to different conditions that I kind of mentioned at the beginning. So dysphagia. So dysphagia, if you remember, is defined by difficulty with swallowing. And so when we have this difficulty with swallowing, this may mean that we need to be on a textured modified diet. So sometimes we need to be pureeing foods. Sometimes we also may need to be thickening fluids that we have in our diet. And when we are dealing with dysphagia, it can sometimes impact our ability to enjoy food and have that pleasure. And so often we are missing key nutrients in our diet just because of overall low intake of food. So some nutrients to consider would be making sure we're getting adequate protein, healthy fats in our diet, and then also potentially considering fortified supplements such as like an Onshore or Boost to make sure we are getting those key nutrients. We may also need to be thickening fluids as a result, and we also want to just make sure that overall hydration is adequate. Lack of hydration can cause symptoms such as like dry mouth or low urine output, which can therefore also impact other things such as constipation or digestive issues. So really focusing on both nutrient adequacy and hydration is going to be very important. The second condition would be food sensitivities or intolerances. So this is something that is very individualized and everyone's triggers may really be different. So working with a healthcare provider to identify what your potential triggers are, foods that could be causing you to have indigestion, whether that may mean GERD-like symptoms, constipation, or loose bowel movements, could be really helpful. But some of the common things to consider would be some of those foods that I mentioned, such as spicy foods, acidic foods, or a diet higher in ultra-processed foods. So making sure that you are having a diet that is balanced, like we talked about, so following Canada's Food Guide, can be really helpful to help reduce some of those food sensitivities and intolerances, as well as making sure you are having regular and frequent bowel movements as well. The third condition that I wanted to talk about is diverticulitis versus, again, diverticulosis. So if you are in a diverticulitis flare, we actually want to focus on, in that moment, having a low fiber, soft diet. So this can kind of actually be contraintuitive or indicating to some of the other things that we have talked about in this session. But when we are in that flare, we really want to focus on reducing that inflammation in the gut in that moment, and then slowly reintroducing fiber as some of those symptoms start to resolve. Again, this would be something that you would do with a healthcare provider, not on your own often, but kind of slowly introducing that fiber and making sure that if you are having fiber-rich foods such as vegetables, that they're being cooked thoroughly, as well as you could even focus on removing the skin of certain fruits and avoiding anything with a lot of seeds as well at the time. And then when it comes to constipation, some dietary considerations is actually increasing fiber intake, so making sure you're getting that adequate amount of daily fiber consumption. And then you can also emphasize some specific foods, such as kiwis are great. Foods that start with P, so prunes, peaches, pears are great options. Incorporating ground flax seeds or chia seeds into your diet. And then also things like lentils and legumes are great options as well. We want to just kind of highlight that fiber also needs hydration. And so if you're dehydrated, this could sometimes be contributing to some of the symptoms being worse. So making sure you're having about the 1.5 to 2 liters of water per day is also very important. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about GERD. So GERD is, again, that esophageal reflux symptoms that we may be experiencing. So where we feel that acidity or heartburn in our digestive tract. And so in this case, we would want to really focus on avoiding any of those spicy foods that we talked about, any acidic foods, so things like caffeine, dark chocolate, tomatoes and tomato sauces, as well as fried and fatty foods often can trigger some of these symptoms as well. And then carbonated beverages can sometimes cause that burping or reflux to be worse as well. So trying to have flat liquids, so just flat water would be a great option. And then lastly, also just trying to make sure that you're having smaller, more frequent meals throughout the day versus large meals at once, and trying to avoid laying down within 60 to 90 minutes of eating a meal. So even sometimes doing like a 10-minute walk after a meal can really help with just aiding in digestion and reduce some of those GERD-like symptoms. So lastly, I just wanted to talk about some non-diet considerations that can play a role in our digestion. So as we age, we know that often physical activity can decrease and the amount of steps we may be taking often can change. So this can impact our bowel system's ability to have things flow. So we talked about that decreased gut motility. And so trying to do regular physical activity, whether that is walking, stretching, yoga, can be really beneficial for not only our gut and brain access, but also really great for increasing that gastrointestinal motility as well. As I mentioned, going for a 10-minute walk after a meal can be very beneficial, as well as just making sure that overall you are trying to get some regular movement throughout the day. The second consideration is regular bowel routine. So checking in with yourself before and after meals to see how you're feeling and if you feel you're in a comfortable space to have a bowel movement. We know that changes in our environment can impact our ability to have regular bowel movements. So being in an environment where you do feel comfortable can make a big difference in terms of our frequency of bowel movements. The third consideration is our toilet positioning. So believe it or not, even how our legs are positioned can play a big role in our ability to have regular bowel movements. So we really want to focus in a position that our knees are above our hips, because this can really help relax our pelvic floor, and even actually work on some breathing techniques can be really helpful to help engage our bowel system to feel relaxed so that we can have a bowel movement. If this is something that you struggle with, there is a variety of different toilet tools that exist, such as the Squatty Potty that you can purchase online, or just again talk to your healthcare provider if this is something that you struggle with. And then lastly, stress management. So if we are in a tense or stressed state, this can actually block or freeze our bowel system from working. And so this is where things like yoga, breathing exercises, or stretching can really help with not only our bowel routine, but also just helping our bowel system feel relaxed and in a space that it is able to want to have a regular bowel movement. So these are just some non-diet considerations to consider. So lastly, I just wanted to thank you for attending this webinar. I hope that you were able to learn about the different nutrition conditions that can impact our digestive health, the nutrition implications and some interventions that you can take, and actionable foods that you can consume to make sure that you are focusing on a healthy digestive health as we age. And considered some non-diet considerations as well in this session. If you are looking to work one-on-one with a dietitian, I invite you to book a free discovery call with our team, or you can always search online for a variety of dietitians. Our information at Nourishing Balance is listed here, and we invite you to book a free discovery call. Again, thank you so much for attending this webinar in partnership with the Canadian Digestive Health Foundation.